Sam Lister is here, political editor at The Daily Express. Sam, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Let's kick things off straight away with that first debate, the one that many people think Keir Starmer kind of made a mess of because he didn't rebut what was being said about his plans to raise taxes.
Taxes are now being cut. Keir Starmer would put all that progress at risk. He would put up everyone's taxes by £2,000. £2,000 in higher taxes for every working family in our country. After all the hard work and sacrifice we've been through, that's not the right course of action. I don't know why you want to put up people's taxes.
Keir Starmer.
Paul, I just don't know how you feel when you hear a Prime Minister say, having heard what you're going through, that the plan is working, it's all right. I meet so many people who are struggling with their bills, and the Prime Minister just keeps saying he lives in a different world. That
Keir Starmer, if people are struggling with their bills, why do you want to make it harder for them by saddling them with £2,000 worth of higher taxes?
And there we are, front page of the Daily Express this morning. Kapow! Feisty Rishi floors Starmer over £2,000 tax rise. Written by one Sam Lister. Hello, Sam. That was an interesting exchange, wasn't it? Because Keir Starmer, you couldn't quite tell if he was trying to be polite or if he was trying to wait for the right time to answer the question. But instead of answering the question first and then going to the person in the audience who asked the question, he went straight to the person in the audience. It sounded like he didn't want to answer the question.
Well, that's it. I mean, it was baffling, really. It was a very strange strategy because clearly Rishi Sunak, his whole attack line throughout most of the programme was Labour will put up your taxes. That isn't a surprise. That shouldn't have been a surprise to Keir Starmer. That's something that the Conservatives have been running with for the whole of the 2 weeks so far we've had of the campaign. And yet he did not address it. It was about 3/4 of the way in where he actually tried to say, look, this is not right. But, repeatedly, Rishi Sunak said, the thing with Labour is, you name it, they will tax it. They will put up your taxes by £2,000. He used that figure repeatedly, and Keir Starmer just did not engage with it. And that left viewers to conclude that it must be true. I think that's certainly the conclusion most people drew from that. If you dispute the figure, then that must be true. Now, clearly, Labour have been out on the airwaves this morning. They've realised what a nightmare this is for them. Yeah. Now they are disputing that figure. But, in the heat of the moment, Keir Starmer couldn't say, I won't put up your taxes.
No, exactly right. And therefore, things like that tend to stick, don't they?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a big thing. People have always worried that Labour's reason for being almost is to spend other people's money. That's always been the fear. And Rishi Sunak was quite clear. He said, look, they're going to raid your pensions, they're going to come after your cars. These are things people worry about. We saw with the ULEZ debate in London how well that played for the Conservatives in Boris Johnson's old constituency. And so there is always this suspicion that this is where Labour will go. And Labour do have this black hole in their spending plans, and they haven't said how they will fund it. What they say is, we won't cut spending, we won't put up taxes, we will do it through growth. Well, everybody wants to do it through growth, but that is something that is hard to achieve, and certainly on the scale that they're saying, on the timescale they're saying. So the suspicion is that they will put up taxes.
And that's the interesting thing, isn't it? Because the DNA word came out a couple of times. Rishi Sunak says, it's in Labour's DNA to put up taxes. Keir Starmer said it was in his DNA to be part of the NHS.
Yeah, I thought the NHS one was a very interesting one because clearly this is something that Labour, they see it as their NHS. It was the Labour government who created the NHS. It's the Labour government, they say, that will always protect the NHS. And I think, clearly everybody in this country wants the NHS to be functioning well and to be able to provide the kind of care that everybody needs at the point they need it. But for Keir Starmer, when he was asked, they were both asked, if you've got a relative who is in need and you have the ability to go private, would you do? He quite clearly said no. Right. And, this goes to the heart of the character of the man, doesn't it? Where, he chooses ideology over the.
I think a lot of people were shocked by that answer. We'll watch that in a second, but let's have a look first of all at their exchange about waiting lists, because Rishi Sunak
Keir
perhaps
Starmer didn't mention to you, which you did, Julie,
The waiting list is 7.2 million. They're now 7.5 million. He says they're coming down, and this is the guy who says he's good at maths.
Yeah, they are now coming down. They are now coming down.
7.2 when you said you get them down. 7.2 million. They're now 7.5 million. I'd like you to explain how they're coming down.
Because they were coming down from where they were when they were higher.
7.2.
And they're now on their way down. They are down, right? Yes, because the NHS was impacted by industrial action. And if it wasn't for that, 500,000 appointments would have been saved.
So it's somebody else's fault.
So perhaps that was Keir Starmer's highest point, wasn't it, where he managed to get the audience to sort of have a bit of a groan when Rishi Sunak tried to put all the blame on the NHS strikes.
Yeah. I think that was it. That was probably Rishi Sunak's weakest moment, was the bit about the waiting list.
Yeah.
And you know, the figures. I think there was a point where actually the waiting list did hit nearly 8 million. And I think I think what he was trying to say, he was trying to refer to that point, but he obviously kind of messed that up a little bit there. But I think, you know, overall, it's, you know, the fact that we have had strikes dogging the NHS for the last 18 months, particularly those consultant and junior doctor strikes, have been very harmful when it comes to those waiting lists. I think that, you know, it's fair enough for the Prime Minister to say that. And what Keir Starmer did not have an answer to was, what would you do with the junior doctors who are demanding 35% pay? Are we all going to have to pay more tax to fund that 35% pay demand from the junior doctors? Or are the junior doctors just doing this as a political way to beat the Tories ahead of an election? They've called, you know, they've called repeated strikes over the last year. You know, will they carry on doing that if there is a Labour government until they've got 35%?
Yeah, and another strike looming on the 27th of June, just before the election, which you'd have to say surely must be political. But there was a lot of that, wasn't there? A lot of Rishi Sunak asking Keir Starmer, what would you do? What would you have done? He said something similar on immigration.
Yeah, I think what the Prime Minister was very, very keen to do last night was put Keir Starmer on the spot for the first time, because obviously in Prime Minister's Questions Times every week, it's the Prime Minister who has to answer the questions, not Keir Starmer. And so actually what we see from Keir Starmer, and what you see from, I mean, to be fair, this is for any opposition leader, is they are grilling the Prime Minister on their record. Yeah. What Rishi Sunak was trying to get to last night was, okay, you snipe from the sidelines, you can attack this and you can attack that, but what do you actually want to do? If you are given this majority that people keep saying you are going to get, what is it you actually want to do with the country? What is it? What is your vision? What are your answers to the big questions of the day? And actually, when he kept pressing him on things like immigration, what are you actually going to do to bring down legal migration, to tackle the small boats crisis? All Keir Starmer would do was flip it back to Rishi Sunak and his record. And so, you know, I think that's the dividing line the Tories want to draw. He's always just looking to attack. He's not actually looking to bring solutions.
Yes. Let's have a look at the immigration conversation.
What will you do with illegal migrants who come here? What will you do with them?
Well, would you consider processing asylum claims in a third country, Keir Starmer?
Yes, if that was possible to do it in compliance with international law, of course. But just let me deal with this, because...
So you do now agree?
Okay, so you...
now, you've just changed your
I thought we were not going to talk over each other.
So you do now agree with third country deals?
So that was a bit of a surprise that he admitted that the Labour Party would in fact agree with a third country deal, which previously they've opposed.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, again, it's quite a baffling move from Keir Starmer. He has repeatedly says he is opposed to Rwanda. Obviously, him and his party voted against it. They say it's cruel, etc., etc. And then last night he drops this, oh, well, you know, third-party processing is not necessarily ruled out. I mean, you know, the detail is which country is acceptable to you. You know, I think in theory...
Or to international law, which he seems to want to be adhering to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I think he was a bit all over the place on that one. You know, he's obviously trying to kind of appeal to voters who are concerned about what Labour would do to tackle migration. So he's trying to hint that, look, we would look at these kind of deals, but in reality, which countries would he be striking deals with? Which countries are acceptable to him? You know, that it seems to me that there aren't any countries outside Western Europe that Keir Starmer would really feel happy about doing a deal with, which obviously means effectively nothing would ever happen on this.
He also made a rather bizarre sort of accusation to Rishi Sunak, where he called him one of the most liberal prime ministers on immigration ever, which sort of had to do a double take on that one.
I think Rishi Sunak was a bit shocked at that one. I think, certainly if you look at the government's record, it has the small boats crisis kind of came out of nowhere, didn't it, about 5 or 6 years ago? And obviously the numbers have gone on, up and up. But certainly Rishi Sunak brought them down by a third last year, year on year. And on legal migration, we clearly had record numbers of legal migration, partly because of the safe route for people from Hong Kong and from Afghanistan and Ukraine. But there has been a significant crackdown in the last year on things like spousal visas, on health and social care visas, which it was widely seen that they were being abused by people who were saying they were coming to do social care and actually were not. The organisations they were being sponsored by did not really exist. And so on. So there has been a significant reduction in numbers on that score. So I think Rishi Sunak feels quite confident on his record. Obviously, there's a long way to go, but he can show that he has made progress in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely right. Finally, let's talk about national service, because it's on the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and this was a conversation they had last night.
Whatever you might think of it, it is an idea that's transformational for our society.
Well, the army don't like it.
But
They say
Keir
it's gonna waste
Starmer, all he can do is sneer at it. Sneer at it because you don't have any ideas for the future. You don't have anything that's bold, that's going to transform our country for the better. And in fact, everywhere I've been, since I've made the announcement, I've had people talking to me about how they think it will be wonderful for their children, how they think it will change our country for the better, and it's an example of the bold action that I'm prepared to take to do things differently to deliver a more secure future. You don't have big ideas like that.
They've been in power for 14 years. And after 14 years, with a few weeks to go before the election, they come out with this desperate idea. If it was such a brilliant idea, why for 14 years has your government not lifted a finger to do it?
So, national service, as I say, the 80th anniversary of D-Day. I'm sure you guys at the Express will be covering it massively, as we will be here. But that came across, I thought, from the point of view of Keir Starmer's supporters, I suppose, as a little bit kind of, I don't know, a little bit bitter. A lot of people were saying, why wouldn't you want young people to do something for the country? Why wouldn't you want them to improve their lot for themselves? He seemed to be just having a go because it wasn't his policy.
Yeah, I think this is one of those kind of dividing line issues, isn't it? And for Keir Starmer, he clearly wants to kind of dismiss this as a gimmick, and he wants to appeal to that younger demographic. And so by kind of railing against this, he thinks there's a bit of kudos to be had amongst younger voters. But I think Rishi Sunak, when he said, because obviously Keir Starmer's attack line was, "This is a teenage dad's army,"
Yeah.
and Rishi Sunak's response to that was, this is a really sneery attitude.
Right.
Actually, that really chimes with a lot of voters.
Also, what's wrong with Dad's Army? Dad's Army, although it was a very amusing television show, the people that actually did what they did during the Second World War were pretty estimable characters, I would have thought.